down, so I'm going to speak from down here. But yeah, my name is Mandela Moses, and I'm so grateful that I'm here today. And it's just such a synchronistic, I mean, everything in my life, I feel like nowadays it's just so synchronistic, and I'm just so happy to be here in New York. This is my first time in New York, so I'm actually really here, and I'm so happy that I get to share with my friends. Like, this is so amazing. So I'm just really super excited to be here, and I was deciding, like, what was it that I really wanted to share today? Wasn't really prepared, but I do speaking for a living, so I was like, oh, we'll come up with something that's really feeling that is coming from my heart, and I feel like is also in very much alignment with the movement of what Gertrude is doing here. And so, yeah, so I guess I'll share a little bit about my story, which this particular story I've never really shared on stage before. So I'm going to go ahead and debut that here and just show a little bit more vulnerability for me here in alignment with why sharing your story is so powerful. And I think one of the reasons why I've never really shared this particular story on stage is it took me a long time to come to grips with it, because I was so ashamed of this part of my life for such a long time, and I didn't really know how it fit into all the other things that I'm doing. And actually in Bali, we've been talking about Bali quite a bit today, but it's when it really hit me. It really hit me. And actually what really got me, what really released this for me, was when I was writing my story for the book that Gertrude published for her story. I thought I was writing this book for others, but it ended up being a book that I pretty much wrote for myself. It helped to release some things out of my body that was just being viscerally held, and it was allowing me to see a little bit deeper in myself, which was needed for me to catapult myself into the next step in my life and in my career. And so I'm really excited that I guess it comes around full circle. So I get to share this story, not only in the book, but I also get to share this on the stage here today. So yesterday, it was funny, we went to Stephen Colbert. I don't really watch a lot of TV, but Stephen Colbert is one of the men. He's just like, he's a beautiful, beautiful man. And he's the one person that I do follow pretty religiously, because he's just a woke man, and I really love and appreciate him. So it was a dream come true yesterday to go watch Stephen Colbert. I was so excited, and I met this couple that was standing in front of us, and we start talking to this couple while we're standing in line, and this guy asks, after we've been talking a while, oh, do you guys have kids? And we said yes, and so asked my friend Denise, how old are your kids? And she explains, and then he says, oh, you have kids? It's like, yeah. And he's like, how old? He said, 21 and 22. And just like all of the thoughts that are going in your mind right now, how in the hell does she have kids that are 21 and 22? He says, I couldn't even imagine that you even had kids, right? Because I don't look like the person who has a 21 and 22-year-old, and I look quite young for my age, and yeah, I just don't look like a mother. I don't look like a mother. And
like a cool mom.
I know, cool mom, right? But yeah, I don't look like a mother. But one of the reasons why I feel like people do have a hard time grasping the concept that I have children was because I had my daughter when I was 14 years old. At the age of 14 years old, I was 13, 3 weeks going into my 14th birthday. I was at a nightclub, and like a club for underage over the summer. And while I was there, I met this guy. The guy comes and asks me to dance. And of course, I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool. It's my first summer going into high school, right? And get asked to dance with the guy. I dance with him, and you know how it is when you're 13 years old and somebody's interested in you. It's really exciting. So I remember we exchanged phone numbers. I come home, over the next couple days, just can't wait for that phone to ring. And this was before, you had cell phones or portable phones. You're just kind of waiting all the time for the phone to ring, because call waiting was a luxury as well. So get off the phone, he's gonna call. Finally one day he calls, right? So we developed this relationship over the phone. We start seeing each other, which is, I've never had a boyfriend before, so we start seeing each other. And I should also add, he's quite a bit older than me. He was 18 at the time. So from 13 to 18 is a big difference. But we continue to talk, and we start to see each other. And I remember it was like over the summer, we're just kind of, I don't really have too much of a recollection how much we saw each other during that summer. But I remember I was starting school, and I remember being on the phone with him, and he asked me, he's like, "What are you wearing?" And I was like, "Oh, it's summertime. Like, I'm wearing shorts and a tank top." And I remember him saying to me, "You're not allowed to wear shorts unless I'm around." And I remember this like red flag going off in the back of my head, like, well, I can wear whatever the hell I want. But then this other thought came in the back of my head. Oh, he's jealous. He's jealous because he loves me. Oh, that makes sense, because that's what love is. Love is jealousy. So in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt love in some sick way. I felt love, but but many of us have experienced something like that in our lives. From there, it led to this relationship, and the whole time in my mind, knowing this relationship is not right, it didn't feel good, but this programming from my parents' relationship was kicking in, telling me that this was okay, that everything was okay. And my parents never stepped in to break up the relationship. They never pulled me aside from this, so I was affirming that this was okay. Even my first time losing my virginity, I remember holding my legs tight, so tight, because I didn't want him to touch me, but I didn't know how to say no. I never knew how to say no with this man, never. So I just continued this relationship until almost immediately I get pregnant. So I get pregnant. I don't even tell I'm 14 years old. You don't know anything. You just think that your problems are going to go away. So I'm 14 years old, I'm pregnant, I don't tell my mom. My mom actually found out because I was actually starting to show, and my cat was sleeping on my stomach, and my mom freaks out and sees that I'm pregnant. So we'll cut through some of those details. My mom was wanting me to have an abortion, but it was a little too far along for me to morally go along with that abortion, so I decided to keep my daughter. Having my daughter, she was premature, so I ended up having her about 3 weeks before I turned 15. So I was 14 years old. I was stuck in a hospital bed for almost 2.5 months because I was very, very sick with my daughter. After having my daughter and almost losing my life, my parents were pretty pissed, rightly so. And because of that, my dad had just got offered a job to move from Washington State to Arizona. And so my dad was going to move, and I knew that if I moved to Arizona with my family, that I was going to have to give up my education. I knew I was not going to be able to continue my education because being the oldest of 4 kids and highly dysfunctional parents, I was going to have to take care of my brothers and sisters like I have been my entire life, plus my daughter. So I had to choose my daughter over my brothers and sisters in that moment. So while I'm sick in the hospital bed, I had to hire a lawyer to divorce myself from my family. So at the age of 15 years old, I now have a 2.5-pound baby girl, and I just divorced my parents. So my parents moved to Arizona, and in order to sign off on the emancipation, I also had to give up my rights to ever talk to my brothers and sisters ever again. So that was my mom's role, signed off, my parents, my family left, and now it's just me and my daughter, and now I'm moving in with my boyfriend. I moved in with my boyfriend and his family. I'm breastfeeding my daughter, who again is only 2.5 pounds. Breastfeeding my daughter, and he comes barging into the room, and just slaps me across the face. I'm crying, my daughter's crying. His mom comes into the room and asks, "What's going on?" I said, "He just hit me." And she said, "Oh, well, you probably made him mad." So you can see where the progression of my life was now going. It was nothing but fear. Nothing but fear. And I remember after that, I was just in this home by myself. I have no support system. I have nothing. It's literally just me and my baby girl. I remember going to one of my daughter's well-child checkups right after we came back from the hospital. And I'm sitting there with my daughter, and we're talking to the doctor, and the doctor, in that moment, starts listing off all these statistics that I was going to be. You guys, your relationship is never going to work, you're going to end up on welfare, you're going to be in public housing, there's no way you're ever going to finish your education. And I just remember her saying a couple of things, but in my mind, it felt like she was saying things for hours. Like it dragged out forever. And as I'm sitting here, I just remember in my mind thinking, I'm never going to be those things. I'm never going to be those things. I'm never going to be those things. And so from that moment on, I decided I was going to take over and not ever be those things. Did it push me to finish my education? Absolutely yes. Did it also push me to stay in a relationship that was highly toxic and abusive because of fear that society was going to judge me for being a single mom, because you were already judging me for being a teenage mom? How dare I even think that I could handle and bear being judged by being a single mom? So I stayed in this relationship for the sake of all of you. How all of you would judge me. I went to school for getting degrees, to get jobs that you would all think highly of me. I spent my entire life in fear of how I was going to be judged. For most of my life, I lived my life for society. I went into job after job. I had great jobs, but I was never happy. I did not live a moment of my life for me. I ended up building this image of myself where people on the outside, everything looked absolutely perfect. Nobody had any idea, even my closest friends had no idea that I would go home and get my ass beat every night. Nobody had any idea that I was living with a raging alcoholic, because I was able to manage my appearance and my vanity and everything while carrying a job and also going to college full time. Because I had to. I was taught at a very young age that I must live to fit in with society. Because the worst thing on the planet that you could ever imagine was to be outcasted from society. And I could not let that happen to me, so I did my very best to fit in with society. Then one day, I remember I was at the time I was working in surgery, and I had realized I had reached a plateau. I wasn't going anywhere in my life with that career. I had reached the top, and if I were to stay in that career, my income was going to be stagnant. I would be stagnant. So at that moment, I was like, my only option is to become a doctor. So I was like, well, I can be a better surgeon than most of the guys I work with, so I'll just be a surgeon. So I went to the Air Force and was going to enroll to go to med school through the Air Force. And I remember going to the office, we talked about how we could make this happen, and I was planning it. And then I left the office and I just went for a walk. And I remember just walking, I was walking through the park, and I wasn't even looking to see if any cars were coming. I wasn't looking for any, I was just waiting to die. I was waiting to die, and I was like, even across the street, I was like, why is no car hitting me right now? Why am I still here? What am I doing? And in that moment, I had to make the decision, I am sick and tired of living my life for you. I have to take control of my life from here on out, and I am so sick and tired of wearing a mask and pretending not. So I went back home. Clearly I didn't go to med school. Thank goodness. But I realized I had to start coming into my own identity. I had to start realizing who I am. I had to get to know myself. And so that was my goal from there on out, was learning to get to know myself. Who am I? Who am I? What do I like to do? Because you can imagine being in a jealous and controlling relationship. I didn't have a voice of who I was. I couldn't even blink an eye. Every single day it was like walking on eggshells. Because if I did anything wrong, chaos would blow up in my life. So I started to do things in this self-exploration of who I am. And then as I'm going through it, and my life is starting to get better, my relationships are starting to get better, I end up getting into business for myself. I really had to understand who I am, because my business is a direct reflection of who I am. So I started to come into who I am, I started to understand myself, and I realized one of the things that had really choked me off in this world was how well I express myself. And one of the places I was most choked off from my expression was my voice. I was always told to shut up by my mom, by my ex-boyfriend, by everybody. You talk too much. You're too outspoken. Why do you always have to say what's on your mind? You seek too much attention. You need to be small. You need to diminish yourself and just hide in a corner and not be seen. I actually got passed up by a job one time because I was too pretty for the job. I was too pretty for the job. So this was the messaging constantly I was getting in my mind was diminish yourself. You can't be too big in this world. If you're big in this world, people won't accept you. So stay small, Mandy. Go hide in that corner. Stay small. Then one day I realized, oh my God, I'm a big fucking deal. Why in the world would everybody try to diminish me if I didn't have any power? Why are they telling me to be quiet if I didn't have something to say? Because they're intimidated and afraid of what I'm doing. And I changed actually that mindset, because initially that's what everybody would tell me. People, when you're dating, oh my God, guys don't like women that have power. They're intimidated by you. So you gotta make sure to be small so you don't intimidate the men. I mean, how, like now looking back, it's like, how absurd is that message? I am a big deal, and I'm not afraid to take up space in this world when I'm looking at this tiny little spot on the stage and say, no, I have been put in this box my whole life. I am not standing on that tiny little stage anymore. The world is my stage, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to wear flashy jewelry. I'm going to put on glitter eyeshadow. I'm going to do my hair all crazy, because when I walk out down the street, you will notice me. I am powerful, and now I finally owned it. And I've raised two amazingly powerful women. I'm 37 years old. I've got two daughters in high school, just about to graduate from college in May. I wasn't supposed to do any of this. But the only reason I am here standing today is because I decided to stop caring what other people thought about me. I stopped caring about how people will criticize me. And I realized if I do speak up, I'm just igniting a light in others that they are now ready to see. Whether they want to do something with it at this moment in time or later, at least I sparked awareness because I showed up. And because of that, I will continue to show up. I will continue to play big, and I will continue to unleash my presence onto this world, because I am doing a disservice to everybody on this planet when I decide to hide in a corner or stand on a tiny little stage. And as women, as minorities, as anybody who disenfranchised or disempowered in this world, you were born that way for a reason. Because you were born to stand out. You were born to be seen. You were born to be different. And it's time for us to celebrate that and to accept that and unleash that badassery onto the world, because the world is now ready for you to do so.
Yes.
I am a big advocate on leadership. Leadership is my absolute passion. I will die fighting for leadership, but not in the way that most people, leadership has become one of those buzzwords like abundance and manifestation and blah, 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 all those other words that make you sick nowadays, right? But leadership has always, always meant to be an inward journey. Leadership is synonymous with becoming yourself. It is that simple and just that difficult. The more you become of yourself, the more you can lead. You lead from yourself, you lead from your heart. Once you're able to lead yourself, then you're able to lead your friends and family, then your community, then your city, and then the state, and then the country, and then global. And each one of those phases, there's an initiation you must go through in order to pass through into the next stage of leadership. And each initiation is always the same. How much are you willing to give of yourself? The law of attraction says the more you give, the more you receive. I truly believe that there were some words missing from that in translation over the years. It's the more you give of yourself, the more you will receive. And anytime you choke off your expression, you choke off one of those words again, abundance. But you choke it off. You choke it off. Why am I hitting this wall? Why am I not advancing? Where are you not speaking up? Where are you not sharing yourself? Through here is the only way you're able to get what you want out of the material world. You can't just sit there and wish and hope for it. It comes from your throat. It comes from your expression. So I want to leave you with that today. How much more can you give of yourself? Where are you holding back your expression? And there's going to be fear when you're stepping across that line, across that threshold. There's going to be fear, but embrace it, because every single time you hold that back, there's somebody in the world suffering because you chose not to show up.
Yes. That's great.